So good afternoon to everybody. Warm welcome to this workshop. Let's say to this panoramic flight of ELISE enabling the interoperability of digital government from a location perspective. So who will be with you today? As you can see on the next slide, there will be our team. Francesco Pignatelli, ELISE Action Leader, Lorena Fernandez, Project Officer, Giacomo Martirano, Ray Boguslavski, and Simon Richards, all three consultants at Joint Research Centers. So at what segments we will be flying in our 90-minute flight today? So after the introduction, we will dive into the location interoperability framework, then see reusable tools for interoperable location data and reporting, take a look at the reuse of location data interoperability principles and methodologies in different sectors, and observe how following a user-driven approach on ELISE action. That will be then complemented by the panel of our panelists. As you will see, beside our team, our crew, there will be also some passengers that joined our flights in the past already, and we'll share with you some of the experiences. Before we start to flying over the segments, I would ask our action leader, Francesco Pignatelli, to give a short introduction of ELISE action.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, everybody. Today, I'm proud to introduce the ISA, the ELISE action of the ISA program. I'm conscious of the challenging time and schedule, so I will be very short with the introduction. You will see much more in this interesting session. ELISE is part of the ISA² program, and the ISA² program, as you know, we has 50 different actions. And ELISE is the only one amongst them focusing on location dimension as a driver for enabling the digital government transformation. ELISE action builds on the principle of the ISA² directive, which established an infrastructure for environmental spatial information in Europe, and also is following two actions of the ISA program, the European Union Location Framework, so-called ULF, and the ARENA, which was a reusable ISA² reference platform. These two actions concluded with the ISA program and were developed further with the ELISE action in the ISA² program. So ELISE supports the building of a location-enabled digital government. So public administration actively use the value and benefit of spatial dimension in its processes. So digital transformation, location, and interoperability are the key topics of this ELISE action. So ELISE, with all this output, good practice, and legacy, will provide inputs to the future activities within the digital program, the Digital Europe program, improving and enhancing the European interoperability by use of location data and intelligence. Next slide, please. The main goal of ELISE was to break down barriers and promote a coherent and consistent approach to the sharing and use of location data across sector borders in context of digital transformation of services. We have also, you can see many examples later on in the presentation. So we are supporting different policy initiatives on European and national level, providing a reusable, interoperable, cross-border, cross-sector framework and solution for public administration, business, and citizen. And also we are discovering how emerging trends and technology enable more effective use of location data for policing and digital public services. Then we have another activity, very important, is the knowledge base. So we inform and train stakeholders and promote location, good practice, and innovation in location data. So next slide, please. In which way we have done all this? With four main outputs, with studies, with framework and guidelines or recommendation, reusable tools, with pilots and application, and also with capacity building and stakeholder support in the various areas. You can see some topics there: evolution of spatial data infrastructure, technology for location-able information, spatial skill for digital government transformation. So these are all types of topics that we have followed during the process. I will invite Lorena to also to the next slides. Some achievement here mentioned are we have complemented DIF and NIFO with an extensive location interoperability framework and state of play assessment. You will see much more later on. We also help the Inspire Directive into practice with tools, data providers, strong focus on use cases in different sectors. We have built an European extensive community of European international stakeholders, raise awareness of new approach to location-enabled digital transformation. Also, we have assessed a new policy like GDPR, European Data Strategy, and technology. We investigated the use of artificial intelligence, blockchain, and APIs in the public sector. Also, we promoted, facilitated better links on location data between public and private actors. Also, some guidance were finalized for the best use of data. So I stop here and I leave the floor to the next, I think it's Ray for the next section, and because I'm cautious of the time. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of the workshop. I will come back with conclusion at the end of the event.
Thank you, Francesco. So yes, please, everybody fasten your seatbelts because we will fly very fast. The first segment is about location interoperability framework. Please, Ray.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session on the location interoperability framework. I'll be introducing the ELISE framework, and I welcome our guest speakers. Miguel from Digit will be talking about the EIF and the overarching framework. Tomasz will be giving a national perspective from Slovenia, and Andrea from Connect who will be focusing at a smart city level. So welcome all, and straight in on the next slide to the European Union Location Framework Blueprint. This is the location interoperability framework developed and promoted by ELISE. It's a high-level framework and a body of implementation guidance rolled into one, and it's allied closely to the interoperability principles and the scope of the EIF. But of course, it focuses on location data in that context. Some statistics here in terms of 19 recommendations in 5 focus areas. We have 6 role-based views of the guidance, and at the moment 49 best practices that illustrate the use of the guidance. The blueprint is available in online and downloadable versions, and like EIF with NIFO, we monitor adoption of the guidance through the Location Interoperability Framework Observatory. Next slide, please. So the 5 focus areas there are on policy, on digital public services, standardization, return on investment, and governance, partnerships, and capabilities. And for each of those 5 focus areas, we present the current state and the future vision. The current state is informed by our data capture in the LIFO. Each of the 19 recommendations, we explain the rationale, checklists of good practices. We discuss the challenges. We relate to the EIF recommendations we cross-reference to best practices and provide further reading. And there's additional information in the form of each of the best practices, a comprehensive cross-reference between the EIF and the blueprint, the role-based methodologies, and further guidance on topics such as location privacy and architectures and standards. Next slide, please. So here's the topics that are covered within the blueprint and the LIFO indicators. So for policy and strategy alignment, we focus, for example, on open data and licensing and privacy. In digital government integration, the integration of the spatial data infrastructure in digital public services and data ecosystems. On standardization, the architectures, the use of APIs and particular standards and quality. In return on investment, the methods for communicating and assessing benefits, on promoting innovation and support to non-governmental actors. In governance, partnerships and capabilities, we do what it says there, covering those three topics. So a very comprehensive and balanced scorecard overview. So next slide, please, and the summary here. So we believe the blueprint is unique. It's user-driven. We talk about the blueprint for a user-driven spatial data infrastructure. We focus on benefits with the return on investment focus area. We regularly update the blueprint. For example, in the latest blueprint version, we bring out the features of the new data strategy, and we have indicators on high-value data sets and use of APIs in the LIFO. It is a comprehensive framework. All the topics are relevant for any one country in its particular state of evolution. Particular elements will be more relevant than others. So we present it as a guidance toolbox to be used selectively and to consider everything within the framework as important. So I'll stop at that point and hand over to Miguel, who will give us the perspective of the EIF.
Thanks a lot, Ray. I'm in the cockpit. Now I will take control of the flight for just 4 minutes. We keep flying over the European skies. Okay, the EIF, you saw already the connections, is the mother specification, is a cross-cutting, overarching framework created under the ISA² program with a group of member states, some experts in the topic, academia, and so on. It's a generic framework composed of 12 principles, 4 layers, and a conceptual model. And there are 47 recommendations. As mentioned by Ray, the ELISE blueprint is implementing the EIF recommendations, is fully aligned. So is the mother specification, the EIF, is a sort of inspiration for INSPIRE and general geolocation, but also INSPIRE directive has been a source of inspiration to, let's say, tweak, refine the new version of the EIF. We can see here underlying principle 2, openness. There is a strong reference to the work carried out already thanks to this directive on location data. In the next slide, please, we see that as in location, in the location domain, we have a National Interoperability Framework Observatory, is the equivalent to LIFO, is complementary, and here we take stock on more generic domains on digitalization and interoperability. So we have regular reporting activities on the state of the art of digital public administration and interoperability. And also we do the monitoring of the European Interoperability Framework, as we will see in the next slide. We have also a community of experts in NIFO, equivalent to LIFO and the geolocation area. For the monitoring of the EIF, we also have a very comprehensive mechanism. We are reusing secondary indicators, certainly those coming from LIFO, giving us a very good overview on what's going on in this very comprehensive and specific domain location, but we also have primary indicators, more linked to the specificities of this overarching instrument, the EIF. We consider that, and this is a best practice that you are also doing in ELISE, doing this monitoring helps. It's not about naming and shaming. It's also to get to know where we stand and to identify areas of improvement. This is a good message to pass and to convey to the member states. We need to understand where we stand and how these frameworks can contribute if there are missing things and how we can support best member states. And I conclude with the toolbox. Next slide, please. We have, like the EULF blueprint, we have the EIF toolbox. Is meant to provide an online tool designed to provide, in fact, guidance to national administrations and equip them to provide them with tools to implement interoperability in all sorts of sectors. We are aiming at cross-border and cross-domain interoperability with the EIF. We have certainly in the EIF toolbox that is hosted in JoinUp platform, we have compiled all the recommendations from the ULF blueprint. So if you go to the toolbox, you will see also the connections and how both instruments are connected together to bring synergy and to build cross-domain interoperability. This is a good example. And I stop here and I give you back the control. Raymond, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for explaining. I'll now hand over to Tomasz, who will give us a national perspective from Slovenia.
Thank you, Ray. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you some experience from our country. I came from Slovenian Mapping Authority of the Republic of Slovenia, which is a national mapping and cadastral authority in Slovenia. And we are also responsible for implementation of infrastructure for spatial information in our country. And I could say that we use the blueprint as an indicator when we check our readiness, let's say, for interoperability of geospatial data in Slovenia. So I could, as it is visible in this slide, all 5 focus area, we could find some documents or evidences where we compare current situation with future state or with our goals, which was defined in blueprint, and we're following almost all those practical recommendations and best practices which were described in this document, and especially because this was a live document which was updated. And if I just mention the policy and strategy focus area, I could inform you that we, following the recommendation in the strategy for a state geodetic authority until 2025, when we looking at the digital government integration focus area, I could mention the document called Digital Confirmation or Integration of Spatial and Spatial Planning and Environment in our ministry. And there are several other documents. Unfortunately, the slides here are in Slovenian language, but I could explain that those documents which are present here include many of guiding principles and recommendations from the blueprint document. And on the standardization and reuse focus area, I would like to mention that in Slovenia we prepare and accept a national standard for metadata within our national standardization body, and there are some other documents, strategical and operational documents, which are following the principles and also the content of blueprint. I would like also inform you that we translate all principles into the Slovenian language also. So next slide, please. Regarding the value of LIFO of observatory relating to location interoperability, we also use it as a indicator, as a tool who monitor and assess and report on the state of play of the location interoperability, location data interoperability in Slovenia. Here you could saw the part which show us that we are not good enough in some area. This is the return on investment, unfortunately. Next click, please. And another one. if we look at the state of play on open data, where lie the reason why we are not good in the return on investment, there is visible that data policy is based on the open data principles in all type of usages of spatial data in Slovenia. So we offering geospatial data without any charging mechanism for all purposes, for commercial and for also for governmental usage, and that means that we not establish enough return on investment in that field, which is sometimes problem how to make a system sustainable. So next slide, please. If I try to explain how it's fitting the ELISE activities within the broader national and global context, I must touch also some documents which are prepared on behalf of United Nations Group of Experts for Global Geospatial Data Management, where some future trends in geospatial information management in the next 5 to 10 years vision period was established. I must say that almost all ELISE activities fit extremely well with all those global documents and vice versa. So next slide, please. Here I want just to show how I saw the fitting the European Union Location Framework blueprint within this broader national and global context. So especially on the global context, I already mentioned this United Nations Group for Geospatial Information Management when there was prepared the so-called Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, and that consists from 3 parts, and first part show us the overarching strategic framework in 9 strategic pathways, which is very similar and very close to the all focus area which I already mentioned before. And the similar situation is in the strategic white paper, not strategic document, but white paper called Geospatial Knowledge Infrastructure to Enhance the World Economy, Society and Environment, where also very strongly linked with the focus area content, which are content in the blueprint. Thank you very much for patience.
Thank you, Tomasz. And we're running just a little bit behind here, so we won't do the panel question, but we will finish off with a very important presentation from Andrea on smart cities developments.
Thank you for inviting me. I work in the area of smart communities, smart cities. So indeed, taking over the wheel, the steering wheel from the cockpit. Now I'm trying to zoom in towards the local level. What we're trying to work with at the European level, Commission level, is to really enable cities and communities to better benefit from the availability of data. And we're looking at location intelligence is clearly at the heart of that data. Indeed, you identify in the policy alignment very important policy documents and initiatives at the European level. And what we're trying to do very much aligns with that, with a huge importance to location data. If you look at the image, you'll see that apart from infrastructure and connectivity, which is really at the heart, at the basis of enabling a smart city or community to function, we'll have a data layer. And here, clearly, trying to create so-called data spaces, and particularly a data space for climate neutral and smart communities, location data will be at the heart of it. On top of that, we're trying to help cities and communities to have interoperable data platforms, and it will also be a important enabler to actually manage what you're referring to as the cross-sectoral data sets. So in order to enable better usage of, for example, geospatial data, but mixing it, for example, with other sectoral data or data coming, for example, from the private sector. And on top of that, we're trying to help cities develop their capacity or build their capacity to benefit from so-called local digital twins that are certainly going to benefit from the location data for services that would be more personalized and timely, related to the actual location of the person, and could even become more proactive, but also trying to benefit from available and interoperability frameworks and standards. In the context of smart cities, there's been a huge work already done throughout European projects, and then based on common agreement among all kinds of stakeholders, and especially the cities and communities demand side, to develop so-called minimal interoperability mechanisms that would be both open and reusable means to actually come to some minimum level of interoperability for enabling better data exchange. And this would be very well complemented, or will be very well complemented, with location data in order to feed into, for example, local digital twins. I also wanted to come back to the importance of partnerships, and you've mentioned in the blueprint quite a number of good examples for appropriate governance. We work with cities and communities who have been grouped together based on common values and principles under the Living in EU community. This is a set of principles for the European way of digital transformation, which indeed relies on open, reusable frameworks that will not lock cities into their into certain technological solutions. They focus on interoperability. They enable for flexibility that allows for better integration of new applications, new services, and that are trusted. So if you show me the next slide, what we're also trying to do is developing a European interoperability framework for smart cities and communities. Perhaps somebody has the mic open. We have an echo. So beyond the interoperability European interoperability framework, and a very important contribution from the location intelligence interoperability framework, we're working with cities and communities to go beyond the technical interoperability, which, for example, the minimum interoperability mechanisms provide, and explore what kind of interoperability layers and principles are needed in a smart cities and communities context. This project is still ongoing. We've just finished the public consultation, and the deliverables will be soon published. But you will see that indeed the European interoperability frameworks layers are very relevant at local level. However, have been also complemented by so-called cultural interoperability, which is quite relevant at local level, as well as some integrated service governance, because by default, smart city services will be very often cross-sectoral and also cross between public and private sector. You'll see that the principles that have been put forward by the Living in EU Declaration are very much valid. And we're kind of in the process of identifying what all this means for cities and communities when they're trying to address not just technical interoperability, but all other layers. And as I said, location information is a key element for this, as any kind of service or policy decision at a local level will need to have this intelligence and information available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for discussing this important area of innovation and these exciting developments. I'll close this session now and hand back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. So we are starting to fly over the other segment about reusable tools for interoperable location data and reporting. So please, Lorena, take over the cockpit.
Thank you, Simon. So yes, we are in the new step of the journey is actually about how ELISE is contributing to. Sorry, I cannot start. Yes, as I was saying, sorry for this. Now it's time for us to know what ELISE has done in terms of providing tools that help in having cross-border and cross-sector interoperability. And for this, I have the pleasure to have today with me Jory, policy analyst from the European Commission at the DG Environment, Ine de Visser, standards advisor at Geonovum, the Netherlands, and Gobe Obona, director of product management and standards at the Open Geospatial Consortium. And for this, let me just 1.5 minutes to let you know what we've done in ELISE, and then we will go through the user stories on how they have benefited, both in the member state at the European level. So first of all, ELISE has funded the development of different interoperability tools, but there are two main tools that we are promoting. One is the registry, and the other one is the INSPIRE reference validator. The registry is a tool that allows managing and sharing reference codes. A reference code can be anything from a code list to a taxonomy. But the important thing that the registry allows is that it uses persistent URIs to keep everything well tracked and in a very well governed way. The INSPIRE reference validator on the other side is a tool that allows checking automatically the correctness of digital assets as data based on predefined rules that are completely customizable. And because I don't have to go in depth in each of them, I will bring what they have in common. Basically, what we've done is that both tools have been designed and developed in a context neutral way so that they can be reused in any sector, not necessarily location. They are both open source software, and actually they've been licensed under the UEPL 1.2 version. They both have a built-in API compliant with the Open API initiative for helping in the reuse also by developer communities. And we have also recently moved both projects to GitHub for fostering the collaboration, to invite developers to contribute also the code. The community is a very important aspect of these two tools because both tools, and particularly the instance in the INSPIRE, as we will see, is completely community driven. Community is letting us know if there are issues, if there are things that need to be improved. And lately it's been very active, and we are very happy about this. Not only it is documented in GitHub, but also in JoinUp for any e-government practitioner or to discover these tools. They have also been recognized in the European Interoperability Framework Toolbox that was presented earlier by Miguel. And we are very happy to say that we have reusers both from the public administrations and the private sector. And last but not least, these two tools will be continued to be developed and maintained under the Digital Europe program. So with this, I close my intervention and I give the floor to Ine de Visser to let us know in what ways the Netherlands has benefited from the INSPIRE reference validator. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to take you along with the Dutch validation approach. In the organization where I work, at Geonovum, we are coordinating the implementation of INSPIRE, but we also develop geospatial standards in addition to international standards. For a long time, we have applied the rule that no standards are developed without also making validation and sample files available. This is necessary to ensure that the interpretation of the standard is the same. Implementations are carried out in the same way, and it also helps to improve the implementations. In the Netherlands, from approximately 2009, we developed our own validation tools. First, for metadata and data models. We moved in 2012 to the SDIN test framework, wherefore the ETF, the abbreviation is. On this test framework, we developed INSPIRE test rules for metadata, ATOM, WFS, and WMS. These test rules are based on our interpretation of the technical INSPIRE guidelines. Although we have our own INSPIRE test rules for certain metadata, we promoted and supported the development of a common European validator. Next slide, please. You will wonder why we did it. We did it because we have the same requirements in all European countries. For the data providers, it is the desire to obtain unambiguous validation results. This is not the case if there are several validators. In addition, we wanted to work on a common understanding and joint interpretation of the technical specifications, and thereby a better exchangeable and improve interoperability of the data on European level. But also, from a management point of view, we supported the development of a common European validator. It says times and resources to jointly develop and manage tools. We cannot do everything ourselves as a member state. That's far too expensive. By actively contributing to joint development, you also enrich the knowledge in your country. Our conclusion was develop and building together has many advantages. Build once, share and reuse it. Next slide, please. Reuse goes further than for the INSPIRE infrastructure or the INSPIRE datasets. The ETF and test can also be used for other domains or supplemented by national requirements, such as national profiles for metadata and services or other data specifications. We often have the same habit of only wanting to use tools developed in-house. The tools that have not been invented and developed in our own organization or member states are available with good functionality. We can use it. We have all the same requirements for INSPIRE that we must meet. So that's our view, how we handle our validation and share tooling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ine. Now I'd like Yuri to tell us that experience.
Many thanks for the introduction, Lorena, and good afternoon to all. Allow me to take you on a short Corona-safe flight to share with you a short story on good practices and efficiency that involves the INSPIRE and the reference validator. I will start with a bit of context. In force since 2007, the INSPIRE directive aims to establish a pan-European spatial data infrastructure in support of policymaking by facilitating public access to environmental spatial information and promoting data sharing alike among public sector organizations in Europe. Now, already back in 2015, when we had the Junckers Commission that launched a package on better regulation with the intention to do a global review of EU legislation, to check if all that legislation was still fit for purpose. This also included the environmental key, of course, and being good students at DG Environment, we did even more and also launched a complete horizontal overview or fitness check on our environmental monitoring and reporting. So we evaluated the INSPIRE directive on its fitness for purpose and found that the directive was still fit for purpose, with some recommendations to improve its implementation. Now, one of these recommendations was to simplify the monitoring and reporting process, and with the view to minimize the administrative burden on the member states and also on the Commission. Next slide, please. So we started out with a monitoring and reporting system that had more than 40 indicators to annually measure the availability and accessibility of environmental spatial data and the compliance of the metadata, data services, and data structures within the provisions of the INSPIRE directive. This data was manually or sometimes semi-manually recorded and documented in an Excel file that was followed after that uploaded to the reporting system. Every 3 years, the member states provided the Commission with a lengthy report in their national languages that largely consisted out of text and mostly static information. The preparation of that report by member states and its translation and processing by the Commission was very, very resource intensive, and because of its textual nature, was not always a source of evidence that allowed us to easily compare the performance across the member states. So in 2019, we amended the reporting decision and together with the member states introduced a fully automated monitoring procedure and largely simplified the reporting as well. From 40 indicators, we went down to 19 indicators, and these indicators are automatically calculated based on the metadata description of the data sets and the data services that are harvested from the national data catalogs. The 3-year reporting was replaced as well by an online country fiche that should be yearly updated in view of any change that took place in the member states. Next slide, please. So the reference validator. Funded by the ELISE action, the Inspire reference validator has become a central component that is used by data providers, solution providers, and national Inspire coordinators to check whether datasets, network services, and metadata meet the requirements that are defined in the Inspire technical guidance and legislation. Last year, the Inspire reference validator allowed us to measure the compliance of more than 250,000 datasets and services that were harvested from 35 data catalogs in 32 countries. Now, 32 countries that included member states and countries from the European Economical Area. And then it also allowed us to calculate the relevant indicators, so the 19 relevant indicators after we changed reporting decision for publishing directly in the monitoring and reporting dashboard. Now, for each type of resource, that's metadata and data and the services, tests are organized into executable test suites, ETS, which represent a machine executable description of those tests. ETS derive from abstract test suites, which ATS, which consist of higher level abstract translations of the legal and the technical guidance requirements into these tests. All the tests included in the Inspire reference validator are agreed by the technical subgroup of the Inspire maintenance and implementation group, which is called also the MICD. And the tests can be selected and executed from a very user-friendly graphical user interface now. And the result of those tests are detailed test reports that are generated to guide the user and the implementers through possible compliance and conformity issues. There's also a standalone version of the Inspire reference validator available that allows member states to set up their own test environment and to help them reaching full compliance. Code and support for the tool is available on GitHub, as already mentioned by Lorena. Next slide, please. Well, that's my last slide. I hope I'm still within my time. So to wrap up this short flight to the Inspire reporting island, some of the main benefits from the reference validator that it delivered on directly and tangible is, first of all, it considerably improved the ground truth data to follow up on implementation progress and the compliance of the implementation. It delivered better comparability and equal treatment through the automated compliance checking based on the common rules that we agreed with the member states. It is fully reusable by other parties, member states, other policy files that can use the infrastructure and the tool to also validate their business rules. And it promotes and facilitates interoperability through support for validating data services based on common agreed service interfaces that can follow international and community standards. For an example, we're also developing for the moment an ETS for the latest OGC REST API for features. The source code is available as open source, and GitHub is being used as a community platform. The same approach that we are using for our monitoring and reporting can also be used for testing business rules and compliance for other files in the environmental domain, but also outside of the environmental domain. For example, for the future high-value datasets for the implementing act that is under preparation under the Open Data Directive. And last but not least, it has brought us considerable time and resource savings, both at the member state side and on the Commission side. That's it. And with this, we'll end here. Back to you, Lorena. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, I think we have time for a quick question. Okay, we've heard from both Ine and Yuri about the benefits that the reference validator has brought to them. We have 2 minutes. I'm informed for this short panel. Maybe since Gobe has not spoken yet, maybe Gobe, could you tell us what do you think the Inspire reference validator? I mean, if it was not available, what would have been the impact on interoperability? And if we have time, then we'll continue. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Lorena. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very clear that the Inspire reference validator has been very successful in helping implementers to build solutions that comply with Inspire implementation rules. Now, I believe that if the Inspire reference validator was not available, then the cost and time taken to implement those solutions would have been much higher because developers would most likely have interpreted the standards in different ways. So then Inspire reference validator helps to to ensure that there's consistent interpretation of those standards. But also for consumers as well, consumers would have found that the differences in implementations are a hindrance to adoption. So the Inspire reference validator helps to provide confidence to consumers, to end users, to procurement officers that, that implementations of those standards actually implement the standards correctly. And so that is, what I believe the impact would have been, that there would have been higher costs and it would have taken much longer for developers to build solutions if there was no Inspire reference validator.
Thank you, Gobe. Do we have maybe some seconds for Jari or Ine to complement? Or we go to the next?
Please, yes, just
okay.
Maybe one.
So, Jari, maybe?
Yeah, that is that 1 second or 1 minute? no. So, but I'll be very short, and I just want to. I think it's important that we say that without the reference validator, that converts these legal provisions that can be abstract and very conceptual into tangible testing that is very valuable for the operational implementation. If we don't have these things, then it's very difficult to assess the interoperability of the implementation and the level of interoperability by all the member states. So moreover, it provides a kind of a bridge between the policymakers and the technical implementers, and it helps us substantially, as Gob already said as well, to provide guidance to those implementers, to the dedicated tests that are supporting the existing good practices and community standards. For example, if we be using OGC service APIs, of course, now, and the only way to do this in a meaningful way is have this common understanding on how to implement it based on the guidance from OGC and implement it in the tests that we have now in the ETS, and the ETS test for the OGC API for features will be usable across the world, not just for the implementation of Inspire, but for anyone who wants to implement a common API that has been supported, and hopefully also will be supported by the Implementing Act on high value data sets. So that is the intrinsic value of this tool. It not only supports us on implementing interoperability, but it also supports us on having a common implementation that guarantees interoperability between different domains and different communities, and even worldwide. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jari. Simon, I think it's time for the next
Yes, indeed. So thank you, Lorena, to you and to your experienced passengers to guide us through this segment. And with this, I would like to invite Giacomo to drive us through reuse of location data, interoperability principles and methodologies in different sectors. Please, Giacomo.
Thank you very much, Simon, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor here to have also three excellent speakers with me. Gabriele Ciasullo, who pioneered location interoperability in Italy. Gemma Hernandez Moral from Cardiff Foundation, active in research in the private sector. And last but not least, Volker Kors, that with his team is at the center of almost all the energy simulations in the 3D environment, producing digital twins for a city. And next slide, please. So ELISE has developed cross-border pilots and applications to test location data interoperability principles in several sectors. And for instance, in the marine sector, supporting member states in the management of Marine Strategy Framework Directive related spatial information. You see a link to a video here. The transport sector, developing and sharing best practices for the implementation of the Intelligent Transport System Directive. Another video with a link to share what the achievements. Energy efficiency, supporting public administrations, businesses, and citizens engaged in energy policies, different steps of their cycle. And also in the cultural heritage sector, exploiting a pan-European gazetteer service. All these sectors are being tackled with a different level of insight. Next slide, please. We will touch a few of them. Regarding the transport sector, road safety data exchange, for instance, speed limits between national road authorities in Sweden and Norway and private sector map providers like TomTom and Here. Road authorities upgraded from quarterly to daily updates to map providers. Significantly reduced error rates in data from 25% to 7%. And now this is very important, the transportation pilot have been rolled out across Europe under the CEF instrument. So this is a nice combination between ISA² and ELISE with CEF. because the solution has been rolled out in 14 countries. Next slide, please. Now let's dive a bit in more details in the energy efficiency sector. In these applications that we developed in ELISE, at the center of this energy efficiency pilot was to leverage location data at building level as an enabling factor to scale up methodologies to assess energy consumption and performance from local to district and city level and beyond. As you can see on the left, we have considered not only directives like Energy Performance of Building Directive and Energy Efficiency Directive, but also policy instruments which are not directives like the Covenant of Mayor, which is a voluntary initiative to support the achievement of energy targets in different time frames. Next, please. Why focusing on buildings? Because buildings, according to DG Ener studies, are responsible for the 40% of final energy consumption. Over 75% of building stock is older than 25 years. And here, to give some absolute numbers, you see how much energy is consumed in residential and non-residential buildings. Last but not least, extensive renovation of buildings could cut 36% of their energy consumption by 2030. Next, please. We executed the pilot, co-designing and co-executing several use cases in the frame of a couple of non-monetary collaboration agreements with all the partners. This is the list of the use cases. The generalization at EU level of a digital platform for public lighting implemented in Italy in over than 8,000 municipalities. The harmonization of energy performance certificates of buildings, the harmonization of sustainable energy and climate action plans to support smart communities made by more than 100 municipalities of the same province, all signatories of the Covenant of Mayor. Harmonization of energy simulations to assess the energy heat demand of buildings. And then from the other side, assessment of energy performance of buildings using energy consumption data from smart meters. And then the role of geospatial information in a regional energy strategy, showing how we explored all the territorial dimensions from local to regional. And with this, I invite the first storyteller, Gabriele, to take the floor.
Morning to everyone. Thank you, Giacomo. Thank you for this opportunity. I can share this project, the PER project, a digital platform for public lighting. This is a project launched by ENEA, Italian National Agency for New Technology, Energy and Sustainable Economy Development. The project is a national project for the efficiency of the public lighting. This project has not only the purpose of energy efficiency, but also to implement a new operational management method consistent with the principle of the interoperability of geospatial information with the strategic objective of encouraging urban and territorial innovation, also supporting the digitalization of public administration for a smart city perspective. In this context, AGID, my Agency for Digital Italy, supported the ENEA for the definition of the data model in line with the INSPIRE implementation rules and the national rules relating to geotopographic databases, thus ensuring concrete interoperability and full compliance with the once only principle. This project was then included in the energy pilot of the ELISE action through the participation of my agency to the Geospatial Solution Working Group. In this context, we have worked together and we have made a synthetic survey with the colleagues of other countries. Now with the ENEA, we are working to apply the same methodology and the principle for the definition of a data model on school buildings and hospital, with particular attention to information on seismic vulnerability. Towards at the end to highlight the possible reuse of this solution at European level. We did a small survey to learn about similar actions in the other countries. Now a more extensive survey and the consequent analysis could effectively consider the Italian experience as a good practice to be reused at European level. This is the good opportunity, I think, for the best opportunity for the best action in the next future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriele. I would like to hand over to Emma, asking Emma to try to stay with 1 minute for each of her slide. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much, Giacomo. So in this slide, you see some work that we have developed in assessing energy heat demand of buildings. Here, what we tried is to compare what different approaches to calculate this energy heat demand could bring and try to harmonize both the input and the output of data so that it could be reutilized. What we did is use mainly this tool, SimStat tool, which was developed by the HFT Stuttgart. We have here Volker Kors also, so you can ask him. And we perform simulations in 4 test areas at different levels, at district, like set of buildings, and at city levels in 3 different member states. And we tried to compare the accuracy of the results depending on the accuracy of the input data that we used. And of course, all this process was mainly targeted to foster the reusability of the methodology in other places, in other cities or other regions. Next slide, please. Then we also focused at a larger scale and we targeted the regional scale. For this, we provided an overview of some competences at the regional and national level to know what kind of needs these actors could have at these levels to support them with location data. And we also analyzed what available public data there was at European level and also at national level that could be relevant to generate a regional energy strategy. In order to delve deeper into this analysis, we took a specific case in Spain, which was represented by the Regional Energy Efficiency Strategy of Castilla y León, together with the EREN, who are the ones who developed it. And we tried to explore the potential of harmonized and interoperable geospatial data to support this kind of processes. Of course, this was complex because when tackling a regional energy strategy, the focus is on energy, but we have to take into account where this energy comes from. As you can see in the picture, we have different sectors and all of them are intertwined among them. So it is a complex problem that still needs to be delved into, but for sure, this geospatial data is of use. Next slide, please. And then finally, I would like to talk about the harmonization of energy performance certificates of buildings, where both the GRC and also other colleagues from Cartier, for instance, Victor, I think is here, we developed a common data model to try to be able to compare different energy performance certificates in different regions and countries. This has been done in 2 specific local areas of 2 member states, in particular in Italy and in Spain. And also, as you can see in the figure, we have prototyped a web application to make EPCs harmonized, data accessible to non-GIS experts. We think that showing and being able to provide this information to citizens or other non-energy experts is crucial in order to make change in this field. And finally, it is worth mentioning that this harmonization process of the EPCs, what we wanted to do is that the entire methodology is reusable and in other regions or countries. So that was the main aim.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you. Okay, in the last slot of these, I'd like to invite Volker to provide his view on this important question. As you may know, renovate energy efficiency of buildings is one of the 7 flagship areas for investments and reforms of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, very actual in this particular moment. In your opinion, to what extent can the applications developed by ELISE in the energy efficiency sector showed so far, despite they are in a still prototype version, but they can support the implementation of the Recovery and Resilience national plans? Volker.
Yes, thanks, Giacomo, also for inviting me to this session. From my perspective, we have very powerful tools with the combination of 3D city models that are, I would say, available all over Europe. I've just seen on one slide from Thomas, the Slovenia 3D. So there are several, I would say almost all European countries building up this 3D city models. And that has very valuable information for the simulations we are doing, because we know we need to know the volume of the buildings, because you need a volume, not a floor. Yeah, so that is very valuable additional information for the simulation we receive from the geospatial data and the Inspire infrastructure. And how does it help to solve the mentioned problems, renovate? For us, it's a tool to communicate with citizens, because the renovation of the buildings is mostly done by the citizens, by the owners of the buildings. It's not the public sector. And with these tools, we can, at least in a simulation, we can say what is the impact of the refurbishment, so we can calculate different refurbishment strategies with the simulation tools, also taking into account climate change, like we did in the example of Helsinki. But it's mainly to make this information available and transparent to support decisions by the owners to do the renovation.
Thank you for your view, and we hope that at some extent, with these tools, we can effectively support what the member states are engaged very deeply for their national recovery and resilience plans, mobilizing huge resources. With this, concluding that, reusing some of the keywords that in these 2 days of the conference I heard so frequently, co-design and reusability, I think we showed how with the ELISE we landed on this way. And with this, I thank you, the speakers and the attendees, and I hand over back to Simon.
Thank you.
Simon, you are muted, maybe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Giacomo. So I will guide you from here on through the following user-driven approach. With me, there will be 3 another speakers, as you can see on the next slide. Morten Borbeck from Mapping Authority in Norway, Eva Pauknerova from Czech Office for Surveying, Mapping and Cadastre in Czechia, and Ricardo Vitorino from Ubiver, Portugal. So maybe just for the beginning, a few, let's say, inputs on the knowledge transfer and user-driven approach as such. As already mentioned in Francesco at the beginning, so the knowledge transfer play a very active and central role in achieving the overall aims of ELISE. So what is knowledge transfer is actually a complex process of disseminating knowledge from one individual or team or organization to another. So in order to solve problems, foster innovation, and increase efficiency. As you can see on the next slide, on ELISE, we tried to, next slide, please. Follow the aims of knowledge transfer to achieve certain objectives and aims. So establishing a mutually beneficial collaborative community with its stakeholders, to create an interactive environment enabling co-creation and open innovation, and last but not least, to turning outputs into the actionable knowledge to the community. Together with the community, as you can see on the next slide, we tried to follow, or to be built together some guiding principles on this knowledge transfer. Some of them would I like to highlight here, like interoperability, reusability, openness, guidance and advice, capacity building and skill, networking and participation, collaboration, co-creation, innovation, accessibility, and last but not least, transparency. Before we dive into the details of some experiences from our speakers as well, I would just share with you some facts that you can see on the next slide. So during these past 5 years, we've organized many events, more than 50 public events with over 3,000 participants, where we shared and exchanged knowledge and inputs and experience by different internal staff, pools of experts, and different stakeholders from governmental, business, and civil society sectors on levels of the society. We were publishing through the ELISE Join Up Connection, having more than 100 members there, even though, so beyond the members, there are also other visitors from more than 140 countries. Last but not least, I would like to mention an important group, ISA² working group on geospatial solution, which helped us as well to co-create the yearly working programs in more than 8 joint meetings. And regarding the content, they were very active into our 5 user panels. The largest one I would mention here, the LIFO, with the 23 member states on board. And from the perspective of the members of the ISA² working group, their experience will be shared by Morten and Eva. So please, Morten, if you can take over here.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. In the context of this digital transformation, we are moving from our traditional SDI in the direction of location enablement, location intelligence, and the digital economy and the society. It's challenging. And if you do this correctly and efficiently, this transformation has the potential to really transform decision-making, the way governments operate, and the services to citizens. And the knowledge transfer and our geospatial literacy is key to make this happen. The SDI community must understand the needs of public administration, and the public administration need to understand how to exploit the value of geospatial data in their application. Next, please. There is a concept called the body of knowledge, and it consists of 3 items: knowledge, skills, and competency. And knowledge, that is the understanding of information about the subject, which you gain through experience or by studying. Skills is the ability to use methods, tools, etc. And the competence, that is the ability to apply the knowledge. And all these 3 elements are essential to understand the needs, the challenges, and technologies related to geospatial information and services in the context of this digital transformation. And within ELISE, there have been delivered a lot of studies, webinars, and articles. It's about 95 documents, at least when I checked a few days ago, 54 events and 43 news. So this is an important contribution to a body of knowledge, which is necessary to do this digital transformation in an effective way. Next, please. Moving from this analog government, okay, that's some time back, but we are moving in e-government direction, and we are moving in digital government direction, and transparency and the user-centered or user-driven approaches is important. And what is actually the role of geospatial in this digital transformation? And we can then think about data, information solutions, technology. I would of course add standards into these pictures. And if you look at some examples of these ELISE reports, it's hard to pick out a few one, but I'll still try to do that. For example, the role of geospatial for digital government transformation, governance models, ecosystems. I know in Norway we have a main focus now on ecosystems and benefits of APIs for public sector organization, the role of spatial data infrastructure for digital government transformation, and geospatial technology, public participation. And the list is much longer, of course. I could also mention a deep dive into geo-artificial intelligence, for example. And all the information in all these articles, in all these studies, it's so important. So from a government led to a user-driven administration, that is one that is focused on the user needs and the city's expectations, and we have to be aware of them. And ELISE is doing a great contribution to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morten. So I will now ask Eva to continue. I suppose you will be into the user panel and LIFO.
Good afternoon. Thanks for invitation. You could hear about the location interoperability framework already in the first and second part of this workshop. I will introduce it more, or its evolution, from the perspective of knowledge exchange and involving different stakeholders to bring a joint product. The INSPIRE directive was mentioned as an example of the interoperability implementation in Europe. In a sense, it is successful and positive, but as it is or originally was meant mainly for the environmental policies, and although it has the only once principle incorporated, there was a danger that it becomes a new silo. And so already at the early implementation stage 10 years ago, several countries were turning attention to the fact that the location data or geospatial information, and however we call it, is important in all parts of governmental services and agendas, and that this should not be either or, that we need to find a bridge between that what's happening in the domain of spatial data infrastructures and INSPIRE from the legal point of view, and what's happening or was happening at the digital or e-government part in the States and at the European level. And so in the early ISA working group, there were on geospatial issues. Those days it was called EU11 the action. There were debates how to create this bridge, and naturally, as this European interoperability framework concept has already inherited this, what you can see as the green circle, domain interoperability framework, this was chosen as the formal help to go on. And as all the interoperability levels, legal, organizational, semantic, technical, these issues were debated. And those days, it was about 2014-15, a number of studies and surveys was done together with the member states and universities, and the shift was also in the way of involving different parts of the Commission. It was not only GRC and the DG Envy, but also Digit and DConnect. They became the joint group to think about this bridging. And at the end, the European Location Framework Blueprint was produced, having already the main principles incorporated. Next, please. And as the European Interoperability Framework has the 12 principles, and the 12th is this monitoring and evaluation of interoperability implementation. The logical way forward was to incorporate the monitoring tools and make it as a complement part to the already existing NIFO, what was mentioned already before. And the process was, as you see, and at the beginning, Commission contracted the KPMG consultants to help with the statistical part and with the modeling part, and the states were those who were consultants for the practical usage of these models. So there were very vibrant debates how to access it, how to interpret it, and also at the level of the member states, at least in the Czech Republic, we had these debates within the INSPIRE Coordination Board and within the Czech Association for Geoinformation with the end users. And so there were several waves of modifying these models and their incorporation. At the beginning, about 5 member states were actively involved. Then there was the pilot in 2019, and this went both ways. On one hand, it was putting the content in, and the other end, it was modifying the methods and structure of the monitoring scheme. And so it was about 10 countries involved in this pilot. And in the past year, there was the first official monitoring for LIFO, which was with participation of more than 20 countries. And so next please. And here you see the semi-results from the pilot. There were 10 countries. You can see these 5 focus areas, and there were the indicators for the 19 recommendations. And the process was interesting, at least for those who were participating, to see how far the inputs or the ideas from the EWOLF blueprint, which were meant as something optimal, really are working, and where the space for improvements can be. And you could see on the case of Slovenia, they went on with the knowledge from this pilot and with the suggestions provided by the blueprint. So this was a process of involving many countries, exchanging views, exchanging knowledge from good practices, and inspiring each other. So for me, who was involved in all the process, it was extremely interesting and useful. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Morten and Eva, for sharing your experiences with us. So we are still here having Riccardo Vittorino as a third member of our section. Maybe a question to you at this point before we are continuing. So why do you think user-driven approach together with knowledge transfer are essential to achieve the benefits of interoperability?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Simon, for the opportunity and for the very useful question. Our expertise is on software development for telecom and smart cities. So we've been working with open standards that enable interoperability for both sectors. But when we develop these solutions, we always have to put in the shoes of our end users. So we follow the approach of understanding what are their current challenges or pain points, and trying to assess based on our expertise and work with the standardization groups which standard or approach works best for their context. So basically doing a matchmaking between their requirements and needs with the market offers. If we enable this approach, this open discussion between the end users who have their own needs and their own context and exactly their own agenda, and the ones who are doing research and development and following best practices to enable interoperability and also replicability of the solutions, we can avoid having the public authorities to find time on their agendas to participate in these groups, which take a lot of time, but actually have the industry and the research to go after them and try to provide and adjust the solutions and offerings to their needs. And that's exactly what we've done with several public authorities, including the city of Guimarães, which is a good practice by leveraging location interoperability in a platform for smart cities. But by doing this, it's no longer we overcome the political barrier and we can focus then on the technical barriers which we can overcome. But the major outcome is to bring everyone to the same table and have an open discussion, and that clears the way and achieving the benefits of interoperability.
Okay, thank you very much, Riccardo, for sharing your thoughts and views on that. So I suggest that we continue now before we stop flying. So to go to the panel, I would ask all the 12 passengers that were together with our team today to switch on their cameras, and would like to ask a question to them. So the same question to everybody. What do you see important in the future in terms of interoperability or location interoperability, and what collective efforts or support will help? I would start, I would inviting here maybe first the people that urgently need to leave because they have their own sessions later on. So Andrea, are you still with us? She needed to leave. Then maybe Miguel.
Yes, I'm here, Simon. Thank you. I'm learning a lot today in this session, in this location community that is not that familiar to me. My message is that you are going in the right direction. Interoperability requires not only a framework, but also practical guidance, like the ULF blueprint, tools. This morning, actually, we had a session on the future interoperability policy and also the ongoing evaluation of the EIF. And we got strong comments from the participants. This is input we already knew, of course, through different surveys and webinars. Member states, well, I'm talking about member states, but all communities at the end of the day, they need, first of all, raise awareness, and the framework helps. But you also need to provide guidelines, more specific and right to the point guidance, and then tools, supporting tools, practical examples, best practices. So I encourage this location community to keep building on all these different elements. and you can always get the support from Digit and the future DEP program. So that's basically what the challenges you are facing are the same that we are facing, the same ones that we are facing in our side on more generic interoperability policies.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for these encouraging and inspiring words. I see Andrea is still here. Sorry, maybe I couldn't see you before. So please, Andrea, I know you are in a hurry for the next session.
Thank you. I think what is really important is, as we also saw in the context of energy, or for example, in smart cities, to go focus on use cases. That's really where we will see the concrete implementation and the demand for the use of location information and better understanding what would be the core areas or core data sets. And so what we've been doing is, as I said earlier, working with cities as communities and a big community all together to kind of come to common conclusions and common interoperability solutions also when they use location data with, for example, other local ecosystem players like private sector or citizens. So I think bringing together different communities, like I see in the context of the Inspire community now, very much at the heart of many of the local digital twins, because many of those twins are starting out of those departments, how to bring them in closer collaboration with, for example, the different communities that we work with. And I think what will help is, for example, funding under the Digital Europe program. So for those of you that are interested, we'll see that in that context, we will be funding cities and helping cities to procure interoperable platforms to actually create a data space for smart communities, which will for sure use also location intelligence, but then how to make that useful for all for portable solutions and how to help those cross-sectoral data flows. And we will help the creation of an EU toolbox for local digital twins, which will comprise of reusable tools and interoperable reference architectures and tools. So for that, I think there is promising possibilities in terms of bringing together communities and also some limited funding from the Digital Europe program. Thank you
very much, Andrea. According to your and Miguel words, it seems that it will be very interesting flights in the future as well. So let's move to the Italy. Gabriele Giasulo, would you share with us your view, please?
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. Very briefly, I think that now I see the opportunity to effectively convey and disseminate the recommendation defined in the blueprint document, especially with regards to aspects of digital government integration. The recommendations are the tip of the iceberg to support the location interoperability and therefore the starting point for future initiatives in the member states. In addition, I think that the consistent expansion of the use of the LIFO, Location Interoperability Framework Observatory, for widespread monitoring consistent with the objectives of the location interoperability in the government context. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, thank you, Gabriele. Let's move to Norway. Morten.
Yes, thank you, Simon. I think that in the process of shaping Europe's digital future, it's stated that the digital transformation should put people first and open new opportunities for business. We see the same statement in policy papers or white papers at the national level. And in the previous stage of developing the SDI, we have to admit that the focus was on users in the professional GIS community. And the technology and standards were specified by experts that belong to the same community, which means, again, that the user needs were, to some extent, more or less identified well in the process. But moving out of our traditional domain in the direction of location enablement and location intelligence, it clearly identifies that we meet new users. We do not necessarily know their requirements, and we cannot take it for granted that they share our geospatial literacy, including, for example, complexity of reference frame. However, we do know that they need geospatial information. In the characterization study of the intermediary sector in the European Union, it stated that geospatial data is the most requested type of data by business. And large pools of geospatial data, together with other data from public administration and business, combined with technical tools and infrastructure to use and exchange data, that is a priority task that is stated by the European Strategy for Data. And users outside the professional GIS domain, they will probably not buy expensive commercial tools to be able to use this data. And this will have an impact on technology and of course also on the underlying standards, where the spatial components will probably be more integrated with mainstream ICT. And I think that this development will be continued in the Digital Europe program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Morten. So let's jump back to the Commission, maybe to our colleagues in environment. Yuri, please.
Sorry, that's my mic. I've been listening very attentive as well. And what I see is there are a lot of initiatives going on interoperability at the same time. We've got the emerging data spaces, the Data Governance Act, the high value data sets coming from top down, legal initiatives. We got Connect working with the Sustainable Cities data space, doing the piloting of minimal interoperability concepts. We have a review of the European interoperability framework. We have Inspire as an interoperability framework for spatial data, but I think what we need first now, certainly at the level of legislation initiatives and also in support of a meaningful investment from the DEP, is a bit of synergy there. And we should at least have a synergy, and we're working together on this, collaborating to get more streamlining into our initiatives and reusing. For example, Inspire is now being reused for the geospatial category and high value data sets. That's something that is emerging and that will pop up one of these weeks after we had a discussion with the member states in the committees. But these things have to be created. So we need the synergy, and it's essential to make sure that we develop a common understanding of what is feasible, and feasible for the member states, feasible for the Commission, feasible for everybody with producing data and can share data, and what is the minimum level of interoperability that should be available at all levels of administration and also in the private sector to also make the concept of data spaces work. But it's very nice, everybody's developing data spaces now. That's the new concept. It's not just one data space that is not feasible, but it's many data spaces. We got a data space, sustainable cities, we got a data space, zero pollution, circular economy action plan, we got a data space on biodiversity, one on agriculture, and so on and so on and so on. So to make that work, there's only one key rule, and it has to be interoperable. So we have to guarantee the free flow of data and guarantee the interoperability. So we need to develop a kind of a framework, a minimum framework that guarantees its application across the board and across the different domains. For instance, at the environmental point of view, we're not just looking at the technical indicators of the implementation of our acquis, but we're also quite interested in the impacts of the environment, of the climate change on population. For example, with DG Santi, we're working together now on getting a view on the geographical distribution of a dominance of pathologies, and then we're talking about allergies, cancer, respiratory diseases, COVID crisis. That is all collected under the human health aspect of Inspire, but also linked very much to the environmental data facilities. The better data we get from the environmental sensors, the monitoring facilities, the more we will be able to link the spread of pollution against distribution of pathologies. So it's very important, not only from the aspect of purely environment and the state of the environment, but also from all the other domains, mobility, food, farm to fork. So it's all very relevant, and I think geospatial data is still at the heart of this data evolution. So from my perspective, it in essence, and maybe just to wrap it up a bit, so to be very concrete, I think we do need a kind of a minimum legal framework that identifies the reusable building blocks and the minimum interoperability mechanisms, both on the technical, the semantic, and the legal level, in a common framework that is supported both by private and public sector, and hopefully not only in Europe but worldwide. And I think that wraps up my big dream about interoperability for the coming years.
Well,
I hope we get support from it for it.
Thank you, Yuri. So the frameworks, skills, quality data in cooperation. Eva, let's come to you, to Czechia. Are you with us?
Yeah, yes, thank you. yeah, there were many words already. I'm happy that the reference validator and the other supporting tools are already incorporated and will be supported by the Digital Europe program, because for me this is extremely important, having strong joint reference tools which are support for the countries which have the duty to prepare the data, but having this joint part is important, and this joint part must be stable, must be sustainable. So the other issue which I'm seeing in practice is that the international standards remain sometimes to be paid in the environment when the providers are supposed to provide data for open, and it creates some cul-de-sacs. And so I would recommend to care and to find way for sustainable financing in the way that these standards, which are the core for having the interoperability in practice, that they are available to the providers and also for students, for everybody, that then can be something what's a part which is very easily accessible. And what I learned from the pilot projects of the Commission, it's not enough for the sustainable financing of pan-European services. I think we need to rethink the former roles and also funding concepts for future sustainable pan-European services, because otherwise we produce just some spots or some short-time outputs, but it's never that what the end users, the citizens will need and enjoy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Riva. So what about the private sector? Ricardo, can you maybe reflect on that?
There was a lot already been said. One thing that I would like to raise is at the technological level, the shift of paradigm from cloud to edge. So while we still are focusing on digitizing solutions and public governments and to the cloud, we also have the distribution of computing units and sensors and mobile network throughout the urban environment. So besides having interoperability, we'll have the context of those distributed units. So we'll be able to understand a bit more and distribute the intelligence that will analyze the data in a specific urban setting, leveraging the efficiency of novel networks, of novel equipments, and providing more energy efficient solutions with higher speeds. So while we work on the interoperability and allowing for this distributed equipment to run, we should also consider that it's not only for data exchange, but also for the proper deployment of these solutions. And I think there's already a lot of collaboration in that effort. It's just a matter of keeping up the roadmap for 5G, 6G networks that enable this distributed content. Thank you once again, Simon.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. So let's move to Germany and to the view from the academic view from Volker.
Yes, thank you. So from my perspective, it's very important to make data available, which does not necessarily mean to share data, because from the experience we gained with the development of Simstadt, I think it's quite valuable to share the data and functionality using APIs. So I think this API development has a very huge impact. Also to integrate processes into tools and software that is available for citizens and then support this co-creation process.
Okay, thank you. So let's move to Slovenia. Tomasz, are you still with us?
Yes, thank you, Simon. I hope you hear me. From my perspective or experience, I could say that currently unfortunately we are still far away from the operational interoperability, but we have a clear picture what we would like to achieve. We have a quite good legal and technical possibilities at the moment, but what I saw the challenge in the future will be much more oriented, or need to be oriented in continuously of knowledge and capacity developed not only within our so-called geospatial sector, but especially out of geospatial sector and especially out of governmental sector also. So we, at least I saw the opportunity in continuous work on partnership and collaboration and coordination of all those efforts and practically implement what, as I say, is already possible or available. Here are some challenges also regarding with semantic interoperability, of course, but I'm fully aware that the new technology, the fourth industrial revolution, will bring in front of us this technical barrier which was fell down, but in our mindset needs to be this interoperability in practice implemented, and for this we need, as I said, knowledge transfer and capacity building, and also the stronger coordination and collaboration between all stakeholders, which I mentioned. So thank you.
Thank you, Tomas. So let's ask Gema from Spain for her views.
Yeah, I will completely agree with what Tomas said before. I think that also interoperability and the use of standards, I think that they have to be seen as a useful tool in order to share data, and not have users be frightened by the complexity of all of this. So I think that if there are tools, if there are validators, if there are I don't know, videos that explain how to use everything and facilitate how to make use of this, it would be better used. And also offering some explanations on what the possibilities of using these procedures are, because if this is well understood and the potential of this sharing data and interoperability is this will be demanded, and relevant people fostering this interoperability will be in place. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Gema. So let's move to Netherlands and Ine. Are you still with us, Ine? No, if this is not the case, then I will ask the last but not least for Gobe. Gobe Hobona from the International Standardization Organization of Open Geospatial Consortium, please.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Yes, so I think in the future, what we need to do as a community to improve interoperability, specifically for location enabled systems, is we need to reach end users and developers beyond the professional geospatial domain, as many of the speakers have said. Some of the ways that we're doing that is through the adoption of web APIs, for instance, development of OGC API standards. We are envisaging that will help us to reach developers that perhaps consider location to be an additional part of their work. So I think it's very important that in the future, in terms of location interoperability, we should try to reach communities outside of the professional geospatial domain and show them all the great things that the geospatial domain has to offer, specifically with regard to location interoperability. And efforts, things such as code sprints, hackathons, things such as action programs such as the ELISE action, and I think those are activities that can help to to get more organizations and more developers to be aware of location interoperability and standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gobe, and thank you to all of you for sharing your thoughts with us. So our flight is a bit longer as planned before, because of the busy skies today. So before we land, actually, so the last message from the cockpit from our captain, please, Francesco, you're still with us here, so to make some concluding message. Microphone, Francesco. Lorena, next slide, please, as well. Francesco, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. We can. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you see me also?
Well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm very pleased for this discussion, especially at the end. Also, there are two things. Next slide, please. First of all, I would like to thank you all. No more slides, just thank you for the organization of the workshop, for the participation. This workshop was in parallel with the lunchtime for everybody. So if you stayed here, it really showed your interest. I would like to thank in particular the colleagues and also the ISA² work program that allow us to do this journey with you. The member states participation, active participation for member states. And also I would like to underline that in this workshop, you can see the importance of interoperability also from the presence of 4 DGs in parallel. You know, today we have GRC, we have Connect, we have DG Environment, we have Digit, and could have been also ENER, Move, Sante. So you can see the importance of interoperability of data. And I heard a lot of things today about sustainability, about the involvement of private sector, about the fact that we are far away from having something very, let's say, operational. So we are collecting ideas. Like when you do a long journey from Europe to the other side of the world, you have to stop sometime. So and then to go again on board to another flight. So this parallelism I'm putting now to say that ELISE is continuing for another, may say, year. But in parallel, we are starting also with another journey with ELITE. ELITE is our new proposal for the Digital Europe program. Andrea Almos also underlined the importance of smart cities, local level. And that's with ELITE, we would like, the new action is called European Location Intelligence and Technology Enablers. And this is, we move from ELISE to ELITE. So what is important for us, what we did in ELISE, is to have close contact with the stakeholder, with you, with member states, and also to enlarge even this community. So in this transition phase, it's important to stay tuned. And so I like to tell you that in my chat, I put the fact that we are building now some videos on our workshop, where you can find also this one. So all the webinars we have produced, and also for future, for ELITE. So please register to this, and we would like to increase our community and stay in contact also for the future. I'd like to thank you again. And we will continue this journey together. We keep stock of all the intervention you have had. I would like to just last message to you. We are working closely with Digit because we are thinking about an interoperability policy. Where we can discuss, we have to collect evidence of the lack of interoperability and the added value that we can bring. And in particular with the location, geospatial, with ELISE, I think your involvement and your intervention were very timely and important for us to understand where we have to go and provide some evidence for this new proposal. That's all for me. Thanks, everybody. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I leave you here and see you next time. Stay tuned and please register and spread the word on the various on Join Up, Twitter, and also you can also follow us on the channel. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Francesco, for this last message. I don't think there is any other questions in the chat, so we are now ready for landing. Thank you for flying with us today, and we are really looking forward to our joint flights in the future as well. Goodbye.